Today we're going to do a video on Inkle Looms. These Inkle Looms are great for sashes and straps and things like that. You're going to need a shuttle. You're going to need some heddles. I'll cover how to make some heddles. You're also going to need a pair of scissors, something simple like that. And the thing that we're going to use today to make our strap out of is a wool yarn. On the Inkle Loom, let's look at the individual components here, or parts of the loom, so we know how we're going to string this up and use it. There's an adjustable peg here on this one end. It's got a screw on the back here that you can loosen and move this peg back and forth in its slotted section here, so you can make your warp, the threads that go around the loom, tighter and looser. So this is called peg A in our written instructions. Then over here we got peg B at the top. We got peg C here. And then these pegs down here are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, and peg 5. If you didn't buy a kit, you're going to need to make heddles before you can get started. The heddles are just a good strong string, they're just a loop, and they need to be a particular length. So we wrap our thread around peg B and peg 5, like so. Cut it a little bit long. Now we're going to tie this up with a quick triple knot. We do a triple knot because this waxed thread is kind of slippery and can get undone. And then you have to make a new heddle. So there we go. We're going to trim off the excess so we don't have too much extra string in our way. So depending on the width of your project and the kind of weaving you do, you're going to need something like at least 18 heddles for a narrow project, and for a full-size sash you might need 48 or 40, somewhere in there heddles. It really depends on exactly how you end up weaving. So let's start off warping up our loom. We've got our yarns, we've got our heddles, we've got our scissors ready to go. We're going to start with an outside string that is going to be a string or a piece of yarn that has a heddle on it. We're going to start off by tying off our yarn here at the slot edge. It doesn't really matter where we tie it off, but I wanted to make it someplace easy that I could get to. Anyway, we start off at peg A. We're going to go to peg C, B and C. We want to make sure this first one goes over B, not underneath it. We're going to go to C. We're going to come down here to peg 3. We're going to go under peg 5. And we're going to go to peg A again. Any string that goes up over the top of peg B here needs to have a heddle put on it. So we're going to put a heddle on this. We just put it over peg B, put it underneath the string, then we flip it over the top and back over peg B again. So as each thread goes over, every other thread is a heddle thread, and the other threads are floater threads. The next one's going to be a floater thread, and so instead of going over the top of peg B, it's going to go between peg B and peg 1, right here, in between the two. Every other one is a heddle, so we're going to go and do a heddle thread again. Goes up over the top of peg B here, goes underneath our new thread, over the top again, and back over peg 5. Each one of these heddles has a knot in it. We want to make sure that knot gets rotated to the bottom of peg 5 here. Now we've got one heddle, one floater, one heddle. We keep going. Now I've finished up. I've got 8 heddles and 7 floaters. Let me go around one more time with our floaters. Now I want to go ahead and I'm going to put a center white, off-white stripe in the middle of this little strap here. I'm going to tie the end of our white yarn onto the end, or onto a spot onto this yarn here. I'm not going to cut this. I'm just going to tie it on. It really doesn't matter what's going on at this point right down here. It's not going to cause us any trouble. We do need to attach this white one. Okay. So I've got the white yarn tied on, and now I'm just going to start going around just like I was going around with the brown yarn, except I'm going to go white. We ended with a floater on the brown, so we're going to go with a heddle on the white one, and we wrap it around exactly the same way as we did our brown. knots to the bottom. So I started with a heddle and I'm going to end with a heddle on the white one. So it's got 8 heddles and 7 floaters. That way our sash will come out with a heddle on both ends, on either side. We tied our white yarn off back to the beginning of itself, and now we're going to start with the brown again. We ended with a heddle, so we're going to do a floater next. And we're going to do the brown one just like we did the first 8 ones. We're going to do another 8 in the brown, and then we can finish up and we'll be ready to start weaving. So I finished up with 8 floaters and 8 heddles. When I get around to this last heddle here, all I have to do is cut this thread off and tie it around to the very beginning thread that we started off with. You can see what we've got here. I've got 8 heddles in brown, 8 floaters. Then I moved to the white thread, and it's got 8 heddles and 7 floaters. And then on the outside edge, I've got another 8 heddles and 8 floaters. One of the things I couldn't show you when the loom was not warped up was what's called the shed of the loom. When your threads, to weave this, you push these floaters either down or up. And when you push them up, you create a shed here, a place where you're going to put your the thread that goes back and forth, or the yarn that goes back and forth. You've got a nice comfortable seating position. You need something to put the end of the loom up so that it's at a nice angle. We want to make sure that everything is the right kind of feeling tension. We're going to run it through. We're going to pull up on our threads, up on our floaters to make this shed. We're going to pass our yarn through. We're going to leave a bit of a tail here. You might even want to leave a foot or so. Just pick a spot. Doesn't really matter where we're going to start here, except you want it to be 3 or 4 inches away from the knots that are on the back side. And then we're going to push our yarn down. I'm going to use my hand. I'm going to make that. I'm going to make this pass through and make a lower shed here. Now we're going to pass our thread or our yarn through yet again. Lower our threads here. I want to make sure that they're all in there right. So I'm just going to keep on weaving until we get to the point where there's no room here between the heddles and the spot where we're weaving. When you get to this close to the heddles, even after pushing them back, it's time to move the whole warp around the loom. You're going to have to loosen the adjustable peg in the back, and you're going to move it all. You're going to move it around the loom here. Try to get it to about the same consistency as you had before, and then we can start weaving again. So I've done the weaving on most of this. I've gotten here so that there's only about a foot between the two things. It starts getting very difficult to weave. It's time to take it, and we're gonna pick a spot about halfway in between to start cutting this off. Bunch all these up together. We'll cut this right off the loom. So we're gonna leave a tail hanging out, and then we're gonna wrap this. We want to make sure to wrap it right at the end where the weaving was done. Make this tassel the whatever normal length you would like. Some people cut them short. If you're going to use it for a strap, you can cut it real short. Snip that off so they're all the same length. Then we have a nice little tassel end to our sash. It's a good, quick, easy design to start off with, but there are a lot of different designs that you could do when you start doing your projects.